a very bizarre outburst happened on CNN on one of these panels where they bring on, a liberal, a former Obama advisor, and then a Republican guy. And it was all going fine. A very fascinating conversation was actually developing. And then for some reason, two of the correspondents just got really irritated at each other and started making huge jabs. Specifically, one of them who looks over, you'll see this, but I gotta warn you for what's coming, and says, "Do you have any friends? You're such a jerk," on CNN, as if it was a bunch of children. So the subject that they're talking about in this clip is the Latino vote, how Republicans reach out to them, how Democrats reach out to them, why they do better in different states, what it is, and this is what develops.
I think Republicans are rolling in Florida largely because of the outreach that she was talking about that the Republicans have done. And I think the Republican office holders down there have started to treat Latino voters, Hispanic voters, like they're every other American that has concerns that are broader than just immigration reform. I think when you get in trouble in politics is when you say you have a certain identity characteristic, therefore you are only allowed to care about this issue that I associate with your identity. So if you're a female voter and I tell you you're only allowed to care about abortion, well, what if there are independent women that also care about, I don't know, inflation? You're leaving yourself out of that debate. I think that's what Democrats have done with Latino voters in Florida and Texas. I don't agree with Jim about Arizona. It looks to me like Republicans are probably going to win the governor's race in Arizona. And according to some polling, Masters is close to Kelly. I don't know if he's going to win, but it's a very...
So we'll play it, and we're getting close to the funny part, but the conversation is a very real one, and one that I think we need to have. And the point that he's making, this is the Republican individual, but I do agree with the broader point that Democrats need to make sure that, and this is something I always advocate on behalf of, not only do they honor people's identity in the way that plays a specific and unique role in their lives and the challenges that they face, etc., etc., they also have to make clear, regardless of your identity, we want to get your vote because of this. This is what we're going to do for you. And we don't expect to get your vote just simply because you're Hispanic, just simply because you're a black voter, just simply because you're LGBTQ. We're going to get your vote because we're going to improve your lives materially. We're going to do all of these things. Plus, we also respect your identity. We also recognize more than the other side the unique challenges that may come along with that, right? So that messaging does need to be focused on within the Democratic Party. And I think for a while, the phrase that people use is the Democratic Party will take certain groups for granted, certain voting populations, which I think is true. And we need to understand that we have to have a message that appeals to you as a person, regardless of your identity. And you can also talk identity as well, because all of that matters. But people are not just going to vote for you because you're the party who has less racists in it or whatever it is,
Very cool. Money on that race?
Do I want to bet money?
Yeah.
Go ahead, guys. Let's do it right here.
You want to bet money on the governor's race?
No, you're just holding the Republican line and everything you've said tonight. Let's be in the middle and talk about. So Arizona is a great example. That wasn't even on the battlefield when you were in the White House or I was in the White House. Now Democrats are winning presidential elections. They have both Senate seats, and you're saying they're doing.
I will say, if you've ever debated someone sitting this close, it's such a strange vibe. You can feel them right there as you're trying to develop your own points. You can probably smell his breath.
With Latino voters, Scott, enough with the talking points.
I'm saying that are you saying that the Democrat candidate for governor is currently doing well in Arizona?
No, I'm saying the Democrats have won the presidential and both Senate seats.
I'm not
since
disagreeing
you've
with
been there.
you. I'm saying in
but
this
you just
election,
said they were driving the Latino votes to the Democrats.
In this
Are you saying
election,
Mark Kelly's not going to win the U.S. Senate race?
I don't know. It's a close race. I'm saying in this election, Republicans in many states, most states, are doing far better with Hispanic voters than we usually do. There is a clear movement in the polling and in some of the races that have already occurred this year of Hispanic voters choosing Republicans. That's an absolute fact.
So clear majority. So they're winning a majority of Latino voters?
I said there's a movement towards Republicans, not a majority. I said there's a movement beyond what we normally get.
Come on, man.
Are you disagreeing? It is a fact that Republicans have done better with Hispanics.
In Arizona, really? So you've lost every statewide race in the past 5 years, and you're doing better with Latino voters? Scott, come on, enough with the talking points.
I feel like your debate with Karl Rove that you had before you came here, like your ears are clogged. I'm telling you.
I'm concerned that the RNC gave you the talking points, and now you can't shift.
I tell you what, man. Do you have a single friend?
Guys,
absolute
guys.
jerk.
Well, guys, stop.
I'm sorry. I don't. No. I'm sorry. I don't come on here and read talking points. You know me, and you know me, and you. I don't come on here and read talk. I don't even know you, and you've come out here and insulted.
But the ad hominem attacks. Let's just.
I agree. I don't want to be accused of reading talking points. It is an absolute.
Okay, so the first part of this is it's just funny to see people who are all serious turn into little children for a moment there. But let's be honest. We can all recognize that probably on policy, the former Obama advisor, whoever he was, who kept saying, stop doing the RNC talking points, we probably would agree with him more on most issues. But in this situation, he seemed needlessly provocative. I don't feel like the points that the Republican dude was making were particularly Republican talking pointy, right? You do see that a lot on TV. Oh, this is just such a talking point. He actually was making a point that I think is generally interesting and has some depth to it about all of this. And what he's trying to highlight is, and I don't even care about the specifics of Arizona, why that was such a big deal. You want to bet on who's going to win? It doesn't matter. But with this, just the point of the shift we've seen from some minority populations to the Republican Party, that's significant. Now, it doesn't mean that they're even close to majorities in those populations of votes, but it is a shift. Donald Trump got record votes from communities that are disproportionately Democratic voters. And so that is something that the Democratic Party should be able to recognize and decide how they can adjust their messaging, adjust their policy priorities to hopefully address that. Very strange that the Democratic dude got really upset by that. Again, I don't know what context, maybe earlier in their conversation he was saying a bunch of dishonest things or he saw a previous interview with him, but in that moment I really didn't understand why there was so much tension. A lot of it initially coming from the Democratic correspondent, and then obviously the Republican made the do you have any friends? Which is such a childish response. Do you have any friends? Oh, you're such a jerk. But I do think the conversation that was being had on that panel is deeply fascinating and should be discussed more. We can't take any group for granted, and a lot of groups we think too often as a monolith when they really aren't, and we need to come up with a message that appeals to voters in all walks of life, because I do think that the Democratic Party, when you take, even though they have tons of issues on their own, when you take the comparison between the two in the weird system where we only got two options that we have, disproportionately good policy proposals and good policy actions are coming from the Democratic Party, and making that a clear message that people buy into is really important.